Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Welcome to this program. My name is Robert Mugabe. Tonight, I'd like us to go down memory lane. Today, the 17th of November, exactly 6 years ago, Zimbabweans came out in their street to celebrate the resignation of Robert Mugabe. This was the moment that was it. Robert Mugabe tendered his resignation, and the nation, the people, went on the street to celebrate. It was a joyous occasion, but it didn't last. Within a few months, if not less, the joy had gone. It disappeared like mist in the morning African sun. Some people have since christened the day #National Zungu Day. That really summarizes the problem. In life, those who do not learn from the past are doomed to repeat the same mistake over and over again. So the question then is, what lesson should we have learned, or should we learn from what happened? Well, in this case here, the people of Zimbabwe welcomed the departure of Robert Mugabe because they were so focused on getting rid of Mugabe. Mugabe must go. They really didn't care who was taking his place. The truth of the matter is, we should have cared. We should have been paying attention. What is the point of replacing one dictator with another so that only a few months down the line you begin to regret it? It's not as if we didn't know who Emmerson Mnangagwa was. Emmerson Mnangagwa had been Mugabe's henchman all along, ever since the country's independence. Emmerson Mnangagwa, if Mugabe was to be held to account for the Gukurahundi massacre, for instance, then the second one to be indicted of the crime would have been Emmerson Mnangagwa himself, because of the key role he played throughout. Robert Mugabe made sure that he appointed individual to do his dirty work, like rigging elections, getting rid of his competitors, and so forth. And Emmerson Mnangagwa was at the forefront of that. The blatant coup following the 2008 elections was conducted by none other than Emmerson Mnangagwa himself, and he boasts about it. While Mugabe had accepted that he had been defeated, Emmerson Mnangagwa himself boasts that he and Chiwenga called Mugabe and told him that he should stay where he is and prepare a cabinet. And what he and Chiwenga went on to do was to stop ZEC declaring the results. And for the next 6 weeks, they were editing the results of the 2008 elections so that in the end, yes, the opposition won, but with a very narrow margin. And more notably, on the presidential result, Mnangagwa, Tsvangirai's original 73%, according to Mugabe's own admission, was whittled down to 47%, just enough to deny him the 50% plus one, and thus force a runoff. And during the runoff, the country had some of the worst violence that we've ever had in our history, election violence that we had ever witnessed in our history. So this was the man that the people of Zimbabwe on the 17th of November 2017 were welcoming as a liberation hero. How naive. You would think, could we have learned? We haven't. This is what is so disappointing. Zimbabwe right now is stuck with Mnangagwa. He's just rigged the recent elections. And one of the contributory factors why he was able to rig those elections is the failure to implement reforms. This, one cannot say it often enough. The opportunity to end the Zanu PF dictatorship was there. The best chance was during the GNU of 2008 to 2013. Morgan Tsvangirai and company failed to implement even one meaningful token reform during that period. And thus, at the end of the GNU, Mugabe and his Zanu PF emerged with all their dictatorial powers, including the carte blanche powers to rig elections, still intact. Elections in Zimbabwe, and this is what most people fail to understand, is not about Zanu PF versus CCC, Chamisa versus Mnangagwa. Just as on 6 years ago, it was not about Mnangagwa versus Mugabe. You've got to look at the bigger picture. You've got to think of the two candidates, yes. Are they what you want? Either or is not always the only choice before you. You could have both of them, they are not good enough. So you're trying to force yourself into selecting one of them as, yes, we'll go along with this one. You're only narrowing your own options. You're only seeing two colors when you could see all the colors of the rainbow. Zimbabwe's political system is not just a question of CCC versus Zanu PF. What people must accept here is that both CCC and Zanu PF have failed the nation. Right now, the biggest challenge for Zimbabweans is not Zanu PF. Zanu PF actually has managed to stay in power thanks to the corrupt and incompetence of the opposition. They failed to implement the democratic reforms which would have ended the Zanu PF dictatorship even when they had the golden chance to do so. Worse still, ever since the GNU, MDC, CCC have been participating in flawed elections to give Zanu PF legitimacy in return for a share of the gravy train seats. So the challenge for the people of Zimbabwe is to elect a competent opposition that will implement the democratic reforms, without which Zanu PF cannot be removed from office. So defining the problem is important. But if you're going to be so narrow-minded to see only the options as Zanu PF or CCC, then of course you'll never get out of this mess. Because right now, whether you like it or not, CCC is now working for Zanu PF. Tough as that may be to accept, to swallow for some people, that is the truth. Nelson Chamisa and company would like the people to believe that they're fighting for change. In reality, they've given up on implementing the democratic reforms necessary for free, fair, and credible elections. They've been openly claiming that they've got now winning in rigged election strategies. In other words, they will let Zanu PF rig because they've got ways of winning those rigged elections. The people have made the mistake of giving up on reforms and their right to free, fair, and credible elections because they believe they can still win rigged elections. That is unbelievable, particularly when you look at a situation where Zanu PF has rigged elections these last 43 years. To now believe that Chamisa will win big. And he has been claiming that he has plugged all the vote rigging holes, when clearly he has not done so. He's abandonedly clear he has not done so. How could he have plugged the vote rigging holes when this has failed to produce even a verified voters roll? He just wanted the people to participate in these elections, to give the process credibility, and for his reward, get a share of the gravy train seats. If we are serious about ending the Zanu PF dictatorship, we have got also to look at the problem and realize that this is no longer a question of we have got the choice between Zanu PF or CCC. Both Zanu PF and CCC are actually now working in cahoots. They're not going to bring any solution to Zimbabwe's economic and political problems. We have got to look outside the box, to think outside the box. The challenge here is first and foremost to elect a competent opposition that will implement the democratic changes necessary for free, fair, and credible elections. Those who do not learn from the past are doomed to repeat the same mistake over and over again. We should learn from the mistake of 17th November 2017, when we thought the task was to replace Robert Mugabe, not knowing that replacing him with another dictator would not change anything. We should have focused on that and realized that sometimes it's not a question of either or. Both could be totally unacceptable. The solution we want is beyond the or. I think we should learn from the past. We must learn from the past, or we are doomed. I would like to seriously encourage the Zimbabweans to start looking at some of these issues with an open mind. We are getting absolutely nowhere the way we are carrying on with our politics. I'd just like to share a comment here from one of the viewers there. How did Chamisa give up? I'm not sure which time did you say he gave up. But if I assume you're talking of the recent elections, it is a mere of historic record that Chamisa was hell and company were hell bent on participating in the 2023 elections, knowing fully well that the process was flawed, knowing fully well that not by participating, they will only be giving Zanu PF legitimacy. But they were determined to participate because they also knew that Zanu PF was giving away a few gravy train seats to entice the opposition to participate. It is absolutely shocking that right up to the voting day itself, he maintained that Triple C was going to win big, that he had plugged all the vote rigging holes, and God was in it. And yet, the day after the election, he started complaining of the elections being rigged, which I find to be absolutely ridiculous, because he is the one who had claimed that he had plugged all the vote rigging opportunities. And now suddenly he acknowledges that the elections were rigged. And what is even more shocking is that many Zimbabweans out there fell for the same trick again and accepted that as the truth, which is incredibly naive. Because this is not the first time that Triple C or MDC have participated in elections knowing fully well that the process is flawed. In 2018, Chamisa was the leader of the MDC alliance, and he was the one who claimed that MDC alliance had come up with stringent measures to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. And it turned out there were not even one stringent measure that had managed to implement. Zanu PF blatantly rigged those elections. And again, Chamisa was complaining that the elections were rigged. You can't keep on complaining that the elections were rigged when you had the opportunity to implement the reforms and you failed to implement even one meaningful reform. And when people urged you, do not participate in these elections without reforms, you stubbornly maintain that you had measures to stop the rigging. This is a It's just a vicious cycle. The truth of the matter is, CCC have given up on implementing reforms. They're just participating in these elections to get their share of the gravity seats. Meanwhile, they're hoping that the country will bend down to the point where the people of Zimbabwe finally, through another coup, as happened in 2007 or 2017, or people going on the street, and Chamisa and company will be waiting in the aisles to step in and claim that they were the party that brought up that change. But until that happens, they are not going to change anything. What we need is a party or a group of men and women who will implement the democratic reforms, the prerequisite for free, fair, and credible elections. That is the truth. And the people of Zimbabwe should start focusing on that and not keep on hanging on to this belief that the choice is between Zanu PF and CCC. It is not. The two parties have failed. Sometimes they've got to accept that the choice before you is the two are equally bad. There is no point in forcing yourself to accept, to choose between the two of them. Think outside the box. There are other choices. The other alternatives are, if these two have failed, let's look for somebody else who can do the job. And that is what people should be thinking about. Think outside the box. That is what I'm saying today to you today. And I think that should be the lesson that the people of Zimbabwe have learned from the 17th November 2017 celebration of Mugabe's resignation. It did not bring the change the nation was looking for. Instead, we found ourselves stuck now with another dictator whom we are at a loss as to how are we going to get rid of this dictator. Yet we welcomed him. We are the ones who thought he was the salvation to the nation, because we could not think ahead. Thank you very much for listening, and good night.